Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Have Your Say video.
Girl, prison, honey.
So this is a double feature video and I'll be talking about Drag Race Season 18 episodes 14 and 15. So I'll start by recapping the episodes, going through the results of the Have Your Say poll where you at home get to vote on whether you agree with the outcome of the episodes. And I'll be talking about a little bit of tea to do with the episode, to do with the alleged use of AI in the episode and the backlash because of it. Some people think that the Lollapalooza was rigged for Juicy Love Dion to win. And in some drama unrelated to season 18, Joella recently revealed that allegedly Naysha Lopez threatened her. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Okay, so let's start by recapping episode 14. So we find out that for the semi-final, because obviously we're down to the final four, the challenge is not going to be the usual where they do a verse to a RuPaul song, but they're actually going to be doing a skit which is called Good Morning Bitches, and it's basically a morning news show which they're doing in pairs. This is obviously very different. They usually do a verse to a RuPaul song. I also think this is a slightly weird challenge to pick, given that this is the last competitive episode before the actual finale, so it was a little bit weird. And the pairings are Mikey Meeks with Darlene Mitchell and then Nene Coco with Juicy Love Dion. There's also the Tic Tac lunch which happened, and RuPaul was dressed in sort of like an artiste's outfit and was saying she does painting in her spare time, so she does a portrait of each queen while doing the Tic Tac lunch. Now this is where some of the controversy came in because the portraits, I say in inverted commas, that RuPaul did, it's been heavily rumored and alleged that these are AI generated, and I think it probably is based on what we can see. And there's been a lot of backlash about this because of the use of AI and not paying artists. For example, I saw on social media that this person posted saying that back on season 9's challenge for the Princess Design Challenge, they were offered thousands of dollars to animate the princesses, but they couldn't do it because of a non-compete contract. So they were kind of questioning why would Drag Race do this because they clearly have the budget. Also, another thing, I saw that some Drag Race queens also called out the use of AI on Drag Race. For example, Plasma from season 16 said that she couldn't believe AI Slop was being used. And interestingly, some of you may not know this or not, but Plasma has actually been involved in some drama before to do with AI on Drag Race. So back in around June 2025, the official Drag Race YouTube channel posted a short called Jinx and Plasma's Gay Adventure, and it was supposed to be an animated short, and it featured Plasma and Jinx Monsoon having some kind of adventure. And it started off with some animation, but then it quite quickly changed to be very clearly AI generated video and images. And there was a huge backlash about it at the time, and Drag Race even removed it from YouTube because of the backlash. And afterwards, people were questioning why Jinx and Plasma would have been in this, but Plasma confirmed on social media that she didn't know about this and she found out at the same time as everyone else. So it seemed clear that Drag Race had actually created this without Jinx or Plasma's knowledge. But going back to this week's episode, to me it was also just weird that they did these AI images. I kind of feel like they weren't even funny enough to be funny. I just thought RuPaul should have just drawn a really bad stick figure and then just shown that, because that would have been funnier than these weird AI images. It just felt like a bit of a weird thing to me and it didn't seem to have a payoff of it being funny. And a lot of people commented about this. For example, my Patreon David said, seeing AI art was so disappointing. The bit wasn't even funny. It would have worked if RuPaul actually drew a picture of them, even if it was a bad stick figure. I agree. And my other Patreon, Lady Nidaria, said the AI art was distracting. And then there were lots of comments in the Have Your Say poll about this, so I'll talk about it now. Some people said, extremely disappointed by the use of AI during the Tic Tac lunch portion. Why would they use AI art instead of paying someone to actually paint the portraits? So yeah, that was like a big thing that I think then distracted from the rest of the episode in a lot of ways. But let me know in the comments what your thoughts are about using AI in these kind of circumstances. Okay, so going back to season 18, let's now go through the Good Morning Bitches performances. And we'll start with the first group, which was Nene and Juicy. And I'll start with Juicy because she spoke first. In general, I feel like Juicy and Nene were definitely the weaker out of the two pairs. I just think Both of them didn't really seem to know what they were doing that much. I do think that Juicy was trying a bit more, though. She was at least trying to be funny. And during the bit where they had Zayn, the guest, who some of you may remember from the Snatch game, when he came out and they did the workout thing and Juicy was sort of putting her head between his legs, I think she was trying to make it funny, but it was just a little bit awkward to watch because it almost seemed like Nene was not into it, or Juicy was almost too into it, and they weren't matching each other's energy. Overall, unfortunately, I think I'd have to give Juicy a nay. In the Have Your Say poll, you said 66.5% for nay, 31.1% for just okay, and then 2.4% for yay. Okay, so now let's move on to Nene Coco. As I said, I don't think either of them were great. I actually thought that Nene was in some ways almost worse than Juicy. I don't know. It kind of depends. She was the one who was taking a lot more seriously, and I guess she was doing the important job of driving it. And actually, I think Juicy was almost going too far beyond, so Nene had to keep reining her back in to kind of keep it serious. But I also think it just came across as being really stiff, so I probably would also give it a nay. In the Have Your Say poll, interestingly, you must have actually liked Nene more than Juicy, because you said 58.9% for just okay, 35.1% for nay, and then 6% for yay. Okay, so the second pair was Mikey Meeks and Darlene Mitchell, and we'll start with Mikey because she spoke first. I loved these two together. They were so fun. I do think that Mikey was having to play kind of like the straight man, as they called it, or straight woman, but obviously not, to Darlene, because Darlene was clearly the one making the jokes and everything, whereas Mikey was having to be the one to sort of really keep it on track and be almost I think they call it the foil to Darlene. And it is hard to be the foil because you have to almost be the one keeping it serious. But I think Mikey did a great job. She was so natural on camera. She was so funny. She had really good little quirky lines. Everything made me laugh. Definitely a yay. In the Have Your Say poll, I think you agreed. 87.1% said yay, so I think that speaks for itself. 11% for just okay, and 1.9% for nay. Then moving on to Darlene. Darlene, I think, definitely stole the show because she just has such an amazing natural charisma. She was so funny. As I said, I think she was definitely the one going a bit more crazy than Mikey, and Mikey was having to then keep it on track. But I think because Darlene is just so naturally likable, it's hard to sort of not be captivated by her. I thought she did a great job, so I would definitely give it a yay. In the Have Your Say poll, again, amazing landslide. 92.7% said yay. So again, you don't have to be a mathematician to work that one out.
I didn't go to school for math.
6% for just okay, and 1.3% for nay. So I asked you who gets the slay for the good morning bitches, and you voted Darlene Mitchell with 63.1%, then Mikey Meeks with 35.3%, and then Juicy Love Dion got 1%. I would definitely agree. I loved Darlene. I thought she was very naturally charismatic, very funny. She fulfilled the brief. She was the one obviously coming up with the quirky stuff. I also think she kind of stole the show because she got the most airtime, and Mikey maybe didn't get quite as much of a look in, because especially in the second half, Darlene definitely took over a bit more, doing the poses for the, looking at the potato salad or whatever it was. So I do think that Darlene stole the show because of that, so I'd have to give her the slay. Okay, so let's move on to the runway, and the category was drag excellence. So we'll start with Juicy Love Dion. Before they even mentioned it on the show, I nudged my boyfriend when we were watching this and I said, that's a reference to Morphine Love Dion, because I am a crazy Drag Race fan, so I remember this with like the gold hair and everything. I think this outfit is really pretty. It definitely gives drag excellence. I'd give it a yay. In the Have Your Say poll, I was kind of surprised that this didn't get more. So 47.2% said yay, but then 39.2% said just okay. Personally, I don't see that. I thought it was really good. And then 13.6% of you said nay for some reason. Next up was Nene Coco. I really enjoyed this. It's so bizarre, so weird. We all love some pointy titties. And the fact that she made this is even better. It's kind of giving me like Cruella de Vil sort of meets like Fifth Element or something, some like weird amalgamation of that. I really liked it. I'd give it a yay. In the Have Your Say poll, you said 87.9% for yay. I would agree. In fact, I would actually say it should be more than that. 10% for just okay, and then 2.1% said nay. Then, penultimately, we have Mikey Meeks. I think this is a very pretty outfit. I did see somewhere that someone posted saying that this is actually the same fabric as another queen who used this because they must have got it from the same shop. I think it's a nice outfit and I think it fits her really well. I wasn't the biggest fan, I will say, of this wire thing that went around her. I think it's a cool idea, but she has done that before and I think it looked better before. This one looked slightly cheap. I think it would have looked better without it, but I still would give it a yay because it's a nice look. In the Have Your Say poll, you said 54.7% for yay, but then 35% for just okay. Maybe you also thought the same as me that the wire wasn't that great, and then 10.4% for nay. And finally, we have Darlene Mitchell. I was very torn about this look because I think it's cool. The color combination, the gold and the red are really nice. I do think, although Darlene's not known for necessarily being a fashion queen, shall we say, she has some quite quirky choices. I will say I think this is, this sounds mean, but for Darlene, this is still good, but I think it is a little bit more on the basic side compared to a lot of the other outfits. I did love, though, that she still wore those clunky ass shoes to really, show it to Michelle. So in general, I think I probably would give it a just okay. In the Have Your Say poll, you were quite split. So actually 43.7% said yay. So yay did get the biggest portion. Then it was 40.3%, so not that far off for just okay. I would agree it's probably more just okay than yay for me. And then 16% for nay. But then I asked you, whose drag excellence look gets a slay? And you voted 62.5% for Nene Coco, 14.7% for Mikey Meeks. Then it was Juicy Love Dion with 12%. And then fourth was Darlene Mitchell with 10.8%. I would agree, Nene's was the most interesting and intriguing to me because it wasn't just the standard drag excellence look that you would expect. It was something very bizarre, but still really excellent, as you could say. So I definitely would agree. I'd give Nene the slay. So we find out the winner is a joint win between Darlene Mitchell and Mikey Meeks. I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, did you agree with the winner? You said 83.7% for yes, but then 16.3% said no. So for that 16% of you that said no, so not a huge portion, I said, who do you think should have won instead? And I gave you the option of it being solo wins or one of the other two queens. And you voted 75.2% for Darlene Mitchell as a solo win, Mikey Meeks as a solo win with 17.8%. Then it was Nene Coco who only got 4%, and then Juicy with 3%. Personally, I think I did actually agree with the joint win because they did do it in pairs, and I find it better when they judge in pairs because otherwise what's the point of putting them in teams or groups? And I do think Mikey and Darlene worked really well together and they both brought a different energy to it, so they did deserve a joint win. And so that means the bottom two automatically are obviously Juicy Love Dion and Nene Coco. I asked you, do you agree with the bottom two? You said 95.5% for yes, and then 4.5% said no, so a huge landslide. For that tiny 4.5% of you, though, who did say no, I said, who do you think should have been the bottom two instead? You voted Juicy Love Dion, but then Darlene Mitchell. So Nene and Juicy then lip-synced the song Super Graphic Ultra Modern Girl by Chappelle Roanne. And it's announced that Nene Coco is the winner and therefore makes it into the final three, and then Juicy Love Dion is eliminated. I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, who do you think won the lip sync in your opinion? Now this was almost completely 50-50 split, which almost never happens. But Juicy Love Dion technically came out on top with 50.1%, and Nene Coco then came second with 49.9%, although that is a tiny, tiny percentage difference. I think I would agree that I think Juicy did win the lip sync. I think it was pretty close, so they both did a really good job. Obviously, Nene was a bit more constrained because of the outfit she was wearing, but I do think Juicy actually did win it. But ultimately, Juicy had a lower track record than Nene, so I think that probably did play into it. Also, I think it's quite interesting that this is a final three we have, because usually it's a final four. I was gagged that Juicy got eliminated. I really thought RuPaul was going to say, okay, Nene, you won the lip sync, and Juicy, you're also safe and you're also going through to the top four. So when Juicy actually got eliminated, I was genuinely gagged. So I am kind of glad in a way that they are keeping it a little bit different and switching up the format. So finally for this episode, I said question 8, based on what we've seen so far, who do you want to win the season out of the top three? You said Darlene Mitchell, 45.6%, then Mikey Meeks with 39.6%, 14.6, and then Nene Coco with 14.7. But then interestingly, for question 9, I said, based on what we've seen so far, who do you think will win the season? This was then a landslide, 80.9% for Mikey Meeks. So it looks like most of you really want Darlene to win, but you think by far Mikey is going to win. And I would agree. I think Darlene has had a complete 180 in this competition. She went from being someone who a lot of people thought was going to be a first out to now being a fan favorite. I don't think she's going to win. I do think Mikey's going to win, but it is crazy to see the trajectory and the change that Darlene has had. And it would actually be kind of funny if Darlene won, I think, but ultimately I think Mikey is probably going to win. Okay, so quickly moving on to the comments for this week. We'll start with my Patreon comments. By the way, if you want your comment featured as a priority in these videos, check out my Patreon, which I'll link to in the description. Not only do you get priority access to my videos and getting your comment featured, but also exclusive content like things that I don't show on Roscoe's on my YouTube, and I put it exclusively on my Patreon, among other things. So go check that out, and it also helps support the channel and buy me nice things. But starting with my patron Aaron, who said, how did Nene win last week's lip sync by doing a backflip and then win this one while Juicy was basically flying around on stage? It makes no sense. The riggery rumors are back for me. And my patron Oxymoron said, Nene did very well in this lip sync, having so strict of a gown. I'm not sure if she won, but it's better for Juicy to lose this lip sync because she'll destroy the Lollapalooza. Now, this is a big thing. I did think Juicy would probably go through to the lip sync Lollapalooza because she is probably the best lip syncer. So that was also in my mind thinking who's going to win. And so then when it was announced Nene won, I did think it sort of made sense. My patron Max said, Darlene being the new Bianca was not on my season 18 bingo card, meaning that Darlene has never lip synced and has gone through to the final a bit like Bianca Del Rio on her season. And then my patron Deb said, I love Mikey, but crowning Darlene would be so fun. She's just good old fashioned fun.
No one's fun anymore. Whatever happened to fun?
I do agree. I do think it would be fun for Darlene to win, but in terms of who deserves it more, in terms of the track record and things, I do think it's Mikey. And in the Have Your Say poll comments, people said, for example, this was one of those lip syncs where neither delivered a strong enough performance. I'm not sure if that's true, but I think ultimately it was based on track record. That part I do agree with. Someone also said the judging this season feels like it's been all over the place and will hurt how the season is remembered in the long run. That is potentially, I think, quite an accurate reading of this season. And then someone else made the same point of saying they wanted Juicy in the Lollapalooza. This challenge set her up. So I guess it is a bit of a, is it a conspiracy? Is it not that they wanted Juicy to go so she could be in the Lollapalooza? Let's talk about that now. Okay, so let's move on to episode 15, which is the Lollapalooza, which is when all the eliminated queens come back and there's basically a lip sync off until a winner is crowned and they win $50,000. It was really nice to see all the eliminated queens again. There was a little bit of drama in the workroom where Sierra Mist was confronted by Jane Don't because Jane said, did you sabotage me when you gave me the scraps of fabric in your suitcase? And Sierra said no, but Jane didn't seem to believe her. And that's really the only drama we had. And it's sort of, they were trying to show, I think, that maybe Sierra was being seen as being a bit delusional or something, I'm not sure, but that was really the only drama there was. Hello everyone, this is the illustrious Dr. Claudia Poussey in the editing room. Matt was a little bit of a forgetful kitty cat this week, and he forgot to mention that the Briar Blush will not be taking part in the lip sync Lollapalooza because she explained that because of her pneumonia after she fainted, they don't think she should take part, so she will just be watching and is not taking part. Okay, so let's get into the actual lip syncs themselves. First of all, just to explain the format, as they said, it's a little bit of a different format to usual. First of all of the songs are RuPaul songs, and a lot of people online were joking, is there something to do with like a budget crisis going on? We did know it was going to be RuPaul songs because in the IMDb listing that came out for this episode before the episode came out, it said that it was going to be all RuPaul songs, and people weren't sure if that was true or not, but it is. Also, they're going to do 3 rounds and then a final, and then obviously who wins. Normally the queens get to pick their opponents or the songs and it kind of whittles down from there. But actually what they're doing is the first batch of queens who got eliminated from the season are going to lip sync. Then it's going to be the queens who got eliminated in the second half of the competition. But then because Juicy was the last queen to be eliminated up until the final, she gets to skip the first 2 rounds and go straight into round 3. Now, this even more fed into the rumors and the conspiracy theories. People think that Juicy was deliberately got rid of last episode so she could come in and win the Lollapalooza. And I also maybe was also a little bit thinking that, because that was a huge advantage for Juicy to be able to skip to essentially the first half of the lip syncs and then only have to lip sync potentially twice to get into the final. So yeah, I'll let you decide whether you think that was riggery or not. And we find out the way they're doing the picking is that one queen's name is chosen when they spin the balls. That queen then has to pick their opponent, and then the opponent gets to pick the song. So obviously it was very much picking someone who you think's going to pick the song that you want. But I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, would you rather be able to pick the song or your opponent? You said 72.6% for the song and 27.4% for the opponent. And I would agree. As someone who has a PhD in the lip syncing,
That's false, America.
I would say that I would pick the song rather than the opponent, because you know what you can give with a song, you know which songs you know the lyrics better to, but also I guess if you're confident enough, it doesn't really matter who you're going against, so I'd rather pick the song. Okay, so let's now go through the lip syncs in order in which they happened. The first lip sync was Sierra Mist against Athena Dion to the song Born Naked by RuPaul. And we find out that Sierra Mist is chosen as the winner. Personally, I did not agree with this. I thought that Athena actually won this one. This was one of the only ones I genuinely was gagged by the result. But in terms of the Have Your Say poll, you agreed and said 83.2% of you thought Athena should have won and 16.8% for Sierra. But that means that Athena then gets knocked out of the competition and Sierra continues. Next up was Mia Starr versus Mandy Mango to the song Just What They Want by RuPaul. And it's announced that Mia Starr is the winner of the lip sync. And I would agree, I do think Mia won it, although I will say that Mandy did a really good job. She is a really good lip syncer, but to me, I think Mia just had that extra little something that made me focus my attention more on her. And in the Have Your Say poll, it was actually kind of split, but Mia did come out on top with almost 60%, 59.1% to be exact, and then Mandy Mango got 40.9%. Then finally for round one, we had Vita Von T Star versus Didi Fuego to the song Main Event by RuPaul. And it's announced that Vita Von T Star wins and continues, and Didi Fuego is knocked out of the competition. I would agree with this. Although Didi was fine, I did think the outfit just didn't quite work for this, and maybe she should have done that final reveal that she was saving, but I do think that Vita just captured the attention more so I do agree with that. And in the Have Your Say poll, you also agreed 64.1% for Vita and 35.9% for Didi. So moving on to round two, and this is when the more recently eliminated queens then come into it against the queens that just won their lip syncs before. So the first lip sync was Mia Starr versus Vita Von T Star. So it was the Battle of the Stars, and this was to the song Call Me Mother by, you guessed it, RuPaul. And it's announced that Mia Starr is the winner of the lip sync and carries on, whereas unfortunately Vita is knocked out. I definitely agree. I think obviously Vita did have the disadvantage that she had just lip synced, so she literally had to go from one to the other, which is quite hard. As someone who gets out of breath just from walking up and down the stairs, I can't imagine one step, not even the whole stairs, but I can't imagine what it must be like to do a full lip sync and then literally seconds later have to do another one, especially, Vita was like, a lady of a certain age, which I wouldn't be able to relate to because I'm only 21.
Oh, come on. No one's going to believe that.
But I can see why that probably was a disadvantage, but I do think that Mia won. And in the Have Your Say poll, it was a pretty landslide victory. 93% for Mia Starr, and then poor Vita got 7%. The next lip sync was Kenya Pleaser versus Sierra Mist to the song Pretty Gang. And it's announced that Kenya Pleaser is the winner of this lip sync. I agree. I think Kenya captured the vibe of the song a bit more. I also think Sierra was trying, but I think her outfit didn't quite work for the song. I think the attitude didn't quite work. She did a good job, but I do think that Kenya was just all eyes on her because she just can capture the attention so well. And she is a good lip syncer. In the Have Your Say poll again, pretty landslide, 76.9, which is almost 69. Was for Kenya, and then Sierra Mist got 23.1. And then finally for round two was Jane Don't versus Discord Adams to the legendary Sissy That Walk. And it's announced that Jane Don't is the winner and continues, and Discord Adams is knocked out. I think Jane made a really smart decision by saying, I'm going to do something really funny and pick the queen that is known for walking, which is Discord. And I think although that gave Discord the advantage in some ways of being able to do the kind of, leaning back walk that she's famous for, Jane also leaned into that, and Jane was just genuinely better. So I do agree with the outcome. In the Have Your Say poll, 69 0.7% of you said Jane don't, and then 30.3% said Discord. Okay, so now let's move on to the third round, so it's really getting into the end of it. And the first lip sync was Juicy Love Dion and Jane Don't to the song Cha Cha Bitch. And it's announced that Juicy Love Dion wins and is therefore in the final lip sync, and Jane is knocked out. I would have to agree. Juicy absolutely murdered this lip sync. That backwards reveal that she did, where she sort of like did a flip, the outfit came off, and then she almost flipped out of the outfit. That was amazing. I remember as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, there's absolutely no way she's not winning. And I think Jane knew that, and Jane was doing a lot of more comedy, funny stuff. A lot of people online have said that Jane doing all of like the kooky stuff and almost copying what Juicy was doing, but in a funny, stupid way. People were saying online that that's what Ginger Minge thinks that she's doing when she does lip syncs, but Jane pulled it off better. And I think I agree. I think Jane knew she wasn't going to win. Juicy definitely won, but Jane still did a funny, entertaining job, and it was a good lip sync. In the Have Your Say poll, 92.6% of you said Juicy won, and then only 7.4% for Jane. Then we had the penultimate lip sync, still in round 3, which was Mia Starr versus Kenya Pleaser to the song Peanut Butter. And it's announced that Mia Starr is the winner and is therefore in the final lip sync against Juicy, and Kenya is unfortunately knocked out. I would agree, I definitely think Mia won this. It was still a good lip sync between both of them, but I just think it was, to me, kind of obvious that Mia and Juicy were the two best lip syncers. They probably were going to get to the end together, so I felt like the writing was sort of on the wall from the beginning. In the Have Your Say poll, you said 81.1% for Mia, so pretty much a landslide, and then 18.9% for Kenya. So we had the final lip sync, which was Juicy versus Mia to the song Cover Girl by RuPaul. And it's announced that Juicy Love Dion wins and therefore wins the $50,000 in the Lollapalooza. And I would agree. I think Juicy did the best job. To me, it was obvious she was going to win the Lollapalooza because she's known for being a lip syncer, and I do think she captured the essence of the song more so than Mia did, but this was one of the most entertaining lip syncs because they're both amazing lip syncers. And then in the Have Your Say poll, I think you clearly agreed, 83.2% for Juicy and then 16.8% for Mia. So finally, I said, would you rather have a lip sync Lollapalooza or a reunion? Because in more recent years, they haven't really done reunions, and it seems to be being replaced by the lip sync Lollapalooza. And in the Have Your Say poll, you voted 59.8% for the lip sync Lollapalooza, whereas only 40% for the reunion. Now, I know a lot of people in the comments said they would rather have both. I think nowadays, the reunions are a little bit boring because the queens don't really want to say anything because of the social media reaction. That's not the queens' fault. That's, I think, the fandom's fault for just kind of going crazy with the queens. So the queens don't want to give drama like they used to. So I can see that if that's where we are now with Drag Race, unfortunately, it does mean that the reunions tend to be boring. So I would rather have a lip sync Lollapalooza. Okay, so let's quickly go on to the comments for this week, starting with my Patreon comments. My patron Max said, I enjoyed the format change, but ultimately found the whole thing uninteresting, and talked about Juicy and Mia being obviously the final two. My patron Emmy said, unpopular opinion apparently, but I enjoyed it only being RuPaul songs. The music is great and makes for really good lip syncs. I agree. I do think it was kind of cool to switch it up. I wouldn't want it every time, but I think having only RuPaul songs was good. RuPaul also has some bangers, so I quite enjoyed that. My patron MJ brought up a good point, was takeaway for me is that Juicy and Mia won the season. That music video, which was already out by the time the episode finished, cements them as royalty this season. And I can't play the music, but I'll put it in the background. Juicy and Mia actually filmed their own music video to this song, which is Cover Girl, because it was the lip sync, and it was a really like cool, highly produced, nice polished little music video. You can go and watch it over on their social media, and I'll link to it below. But it was really cool that they did that, because I think this is what the fans love, and we love to have something a little bit interesting to watch. My patron Lady Nidaria said, I think something that a lot of people were thinking, which was, I enjoyed the performances, but it felt like the final two were predetermined, and it was structured to ensure that they did get to the final, so it wasn't as surprising or exciting. I do agree. I do think it was kind of stacked in their favor in some ways, especially Juicy. So was it deserved? Yes, but I think there was also maybe a little bit of riggery involved. My patron Nikki also brought this up and said it's a shame that it felt so predetermined. However, we got some great performances out of the episode. It feels weird, like the season is already over. I agree. It's kind of felt like a slightly like almost it felt like the end to me. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the final next week. Someone said, I really enjoyed this Lollapalooza, and Ru seemed to have so much fun trying to pronounce the name of the show each time, because the name of the episode was, let me have a look, it was the All RuPaul-A-Paruza Smackdown. And I really liked that RuPaul clearly couldn't remember the name of her own episode and just kept like having fun with it. I like when RuPaul kind of goes off script and does things a little bit weird, because otherwise it kind of come across a little bit robotic. So I like when the real RuPaul's like creeps through like that. A lot of people also mentioned the format and said things like, I liked the format to highlight the early outs and build suspense, and there were no three-way lip syncs, although we all love a good three-way, am I right?
Because you're a slut.
But then there were some people who didn't like this and said, this one was rough, really disappointing only having RuPaul songs. But let me know in the comments what you think. Did you like the format of this Lollapalooza and the fact that there were only RuPaul songs? Do you want that for all future Lollapaloozas, or did you not like it? Okay, and finally, we're going to move on to a little bit of drama unrelated to season 18 to do with Joella saying that Naysha Lopez threatened to beat her up. So a few weeks ago, season 17 Queen Joella appeared on the podcast of Octavia from Drag Race UK season 6, and I'll link to the full podcast in the description, which you should go and check out. During the podcast, Joella revealed some major tea that a Drag Race queen once got up in her face and threatened to hit her. Although Joella didn't say the queen's name, from context, it seems pretty obvious that she was referring to Naysha Lopez, because the two of them have had a previous beef. So I'm going to quickly recap their previous beef because it's relevant to the current situation. I did talk about this in a previous video, which I'll link to in the description if you want to know more. But back during the airing of season 17, when Joella got eliminated, her exit line was, well, at least I didn't die a local girl. Joella later clarified on social media after some backlash that this was a reference to when Selena S. Titties said this during a season 15 acting challenge. Well, at Roscoe's, where Naysha is of course one of the hosts, Naysha seemingly didn't realise that Joella was referencing this joke, because Naysha called Joella out, saying how distasteful it is to be shady about local girls. Naysha said, quote, some of the most talented drag queens are the ones who are not on effing Drag Race, so for you to sit there and leave and say, oh, I won't die a local queen, girl, stop. It just shows how unaware and not in tune with our community you are. Naysha also said that it was, quote, the dumbest thing to come out of your mouth, and you said some stupid bleep. Then a few weeks later, Joella was at Roscoe's as a guest, and they didn't really talk about this previous drama, but in the comments on the episode, a lot of people said that it felt really uncomfortable, and they felt like the hosts did not like Joella. Then, in a subsequent viewing party, Naysha made some critical comments about Susie Toots' hairline in one of the acting challenges. This sparked some drama, and some of the queens, such as Lana Jarre, questioned what was the point of Naysha saying this. Joella then replied to Lana, referring to Naysha, and said, girl, she's so irritating, like, you can try to be nice to someone, but if they're a bully, they will always be a bully. I just know I'm gonna treat every drag artist with respect, no matter what show anyone is or isn't on, or how long they've been doing it, and that's all. Naysha then responded to Joella calling her a bully and said, listen, that's the gig. It's a review show and I call it like I see it. Nothing personal. But it's funny how you keep coming for me, calling me irritating and a bully, yet here you are talking about me for a reaction and I'm the bully? Yeah, something's not adding up. And then she tagged Joella. So that was the background of the situation of the previous beef between Joella and Naysha, so bear that in mind. Now let's go back to the recent drama. As I said, Joella was on Octavia's podcast a few weeks ago, and Octavia asked if Joella had ever had a bad experience with a Ru girl, or a Ru girl that she's not fond of. Joella said there was one particular queen who she says hosts a really well-known show, which is presumably Roscoe's, although she didn't say that. And Joella said that she hadn't ever talked about this story publicly before. Joella explained that she saw this queen a few months ago at a bar in LA. They were both out of drag and were at another person's show. Joella said she doesn't like to be unprofessional and she keeps it cute, and she also doesn't really have beef with this person, but this person has beef with her. Joella then said that this queen basically, quote, attacked her and got up in her face.
So they literally kind of attacked me. They backed me into a corner and I kept backing up because I was like, girl, stop. What are you doing? And she was putting her hands in my face, screaming at me, yelling at me in front of everyone. And this was going on for a solid 5 minutes before security told us to stop. She was just like, you went against the sisterhood when you called me a bully.
Joella then brought up that this queen referenced her entrance line of not dying a local girl and how ungrateful she is, but Joella said that this was a reference to Selena S. Titties. Joella also seemed to imply that this queen, which is presumably Naysha, had previously kicked her out of a dressing room.
And she has been the Rue girl at the shows I've done. And I told her, I was like, well, you've kicked me out of your dressing room before, so I don't know why you are talking, girl.
Joella finished by saying that this queen apparently threatened to hit her after she left the room.
And then apparently, she said that she was gonna hit me. When I left the room, people were telling me that, she said she was gonna beat me up. That apparently that's how Latinas get.
So although Joella did not name this queen specifically, given their previous beef and the information that lines up with this, it seems pretty obvious that she was talking about Naysha Lopez. And I just thought that this was some interesting backstage tea because Joella has never talked about this publicly before. But as I said, Joella did not confirm that this was about Naysha, so this is just an educated guess. But as I always say in my videos, please do not send hate to anyone and just consume this type of content responsibly without getting involved. So there you go, there was a double feature Have Your Say video for RuPaul's Drag Race Season 18, episodes 14 and 15. What did you think of the lip sync Lollapalooza? And who do you think is going to win the next episode, which is the finale of Season 18? Let me know in the comments. And I'd like to give a special shout out to my newest Patreon member, Freaky, who joined in the Drag Tea All-Star tier. Freaky, you are not just a star, you are a Drag Tea Served All-Star. If you'd like early access to my videos, exclusive content, get your comments featured in my Have Your Say poll videos, as well as many other things, please consider checking out my Patreon. It's a quick way to support the channel and it really does make a big difference, and I'll leave a link to my Patreon in the description. And I'd like to say thank you so much to all of my amazing Patreons, both new and old. Honestly, you are absolutely incredible. I really do thank my lucky stars every single day, thinking about how amazing it is to have this community supporting me. So thank you so much. Please make sure you like and comment on this video to help boost it in the algorithm, and do your big one and smash that subscribe button because it does make a huge difference. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me for the final Have Your Say video next week for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. Thank you so much. Bye.